of course that's what they attempt to do through their intellect, rather than understanding that it's only because of the error in the soul that needs to be released that no change is happening.
Yeah.
It's only that is the true cause of no change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, moving on to just some other points that I thought were relevant.
Yeah.
That the mind, we've talked a lot about how much we want to use this mind of our spirit body to actually to develop that rather than in our soul, in our other discussions. But in this case, the mind is often used as a tool of denial to suppress the true feelings of the soul, rather than a processor and an investigator that can help us to discover the soul and the soul, what the soul's dominance is all about.
Yeah, about, I think it would have been 8 or 9 years ago now, I wrote a paper, I suppose you would call it, a letter to some people, about using the mind differently. And most people really struggle to use their mind differently than what they've been educated to do from their childhood onwards. So most people have been taught to use their mind as the controller of the soul. And this is our main problem. We think that it can control the soul, and then we're taught to use our mind to attempt to control the soul. And sometimes it's successful for periods of time. Of course, it's never going to be eternally successful because the soul is always going to exercise dominance. And so what happens, though, is that we start telling ourselves, well, the proper use of our mind is to control everything. But that's not the proper use of our mind. The proper use of our mind is to seek and discover all emotions inside of our soul and to release those emotions in a way that's loving. That's the proper use of our mind. So in other words, if our soul feels like going out and killing someone, that's a problem. And what we do is we allow ourselves to feel the emotion and feel the reason why it's present. But we use our mind to say, don't you go and do that unloving thing. Feel this unloving emotion instead. Feel the feeling you feel, that you want to do it. And if you truly get to the cause of this feeling, you'll release it, and all of a sudden that feeling will dissipate from you and you will no longer feel that way towards that person. And that's the proper way to use the mind.
To engage the next principle that we'll talk about later, which is about progression. But it's a very Christian viewpoint that you highlighted, isn't it, that we must use the mind to control the animal instincts of the person or the original sin that exists within us.
I feel it's in most religions, not just in the Christian faith.
And yet there is this other great opportunity that we have that you just pointed out to actually engage our mind to discover and then to heal things. And that's the only way things can change permanently.
And I feel that the majority of people in religious faiths don't understand that basic principle, that permanent change is not possible unless you understand the soul is going to try for dominance continuously. And the only way to fix this is to actually release from the soul the error of what it wants to dominate. You know, the error that it wants to take. Now, unfortunately, in Bible texts and other Holy Scripture texts, there are thoughts such as the heart is treacherous and who can know it. So that's basically telling you not to trust your soul. And what I'm suggesting is trust your soul's feelings. You don't have to act upon them. Right? There's a difference between feeling the soul's feelings and then taking an action upon them. Right? So if the feeling of the soul is to go and do something that from God's perspective is obviously unloving, then you would use your mind to help you not take that action, but you would also use your mind to find the reason why you feel that you want to take that action. And that's where most religious faiths fall down. They don't use their mind to find the reason. They only use their mind to control or dominate, or attempt to dominate the soul. And of course it's never successful. They always finish up reverting to that behaviour. So a lot of men, for example, with regard to their desires for looking at a naked woman's body, they revert to pornography. Then in the Christian faith, they feel very guilty about the fact that they're looking at pornography, so they feel very much like they're sinners, and isn't it terrible? They're asking for forgiveness. And then the very next week, they want to look at pornography again. Now, why is that? It's because there's something in the soul that needs to change, that causes them to desire to look at pornography all the time and not be focused sexually on their own partner, if they have one.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they focus on, feeling all bad and guilty and terrible, but not finding the real reason why they feel drawn to pornography. Once you find the real reason why you're drawn to pornography, you won't be drawn to it anymore.
Yeah.
And then you won't desire to do it.
Yeah.
And so you won't have to try to not look. There will be no desire in you to buy it or to look at it on the internet or any of those things. And then you don't have to feel guilty either that you've done it, because you no longer do it.
And that's the thing, isn't it? The error within the soul is going to try to dominate.
Yeah.
Well, it's designed to dominate our experience.
Yes.
But the longer we live in denial or try to deny, and we use all this effort and we create fear about even feeling and discovering what's in our soul, the more it becomes a problem, doesn't it?
Yes.
And requires more effort, and we have more fear.
And the interesting thing that happens is it's a very interesting thing that goes on. We have to use our mind to think about dominating more.
Yes.
And as a result, we finish up thinking more about the problem,
Yes.
which actually causes a stronger attraction to the problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So it's quite clever that God made this system that the more you try to dominate your soul with your mind by thinking about the problem and trying to focus on the problem, the more the problem becomes evident.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, if you focus your attention instead on finding the reason why you feel that way in your soul, and you release it, you don't have to think about it at all. And as a result, it is out of your mind, and so therefore you're not focused on it anymore, and so it doesn't come up.
Yeah. I just had a memory.
How much change will result once they actually embrace it inside of their soul,
Yeah.
both to themselves personally, but also to, so not only to themselves personally, but also to their family, their friends, the society in which they live, their work environment, everything around them, the environment itself will change as a result of them choosing differently.
Yeah, and I often see people around us who are trying to analyse their progress. Oh, I cried about this, I think it was about that, I think that's going to change this, or I'm doing this, so I've got to figure out, and that, it's very analytical and intellectual.
Yep.
When if we just trusted these principles and just said, well, if I'm willing to be honest and self-reflective and feel what's really there and understand the principle that progression is going to happen if I simply allow the emotion that is there, then we wouldn't have to put any effort into analysing.
No.
We would just feel, and truth would enter us.
Yeah.
And it's only the belief in error that creates our pain anyway.
Yes.
And so there couldn't be more pain. And
so it simplifies
it's so simple.
everything.
Yep.
You don't have to think so much.
Yep.
You just focused finding the error, letting it go, finding the error. There's pain there. Let the pain go. Feel it.
Yep.
The only way you're going to let it go is by feeling it. And you're focused on that. You use your mind to find the pain and to feel it, instead of using your mind to try to run away from it. Try to do all the other things we do trying to get away from that pain. If you really understood progression, you would never avoid a single pain that you had again.
No.
You'd never avoid it.
And sadly, a lot of us have a lot of false beliefs about what's going to happen to us when we feel our pain. But the truth is, when we progress, when we really progress using this principle and feeling our emotion, we have more clarity and more joy in our life, regardless even of what happens around us. Even if more fear gets exposed, even if more emotions get exposed, there is still more joy and quality of life within us.
Yes.
Within us and in our relationship with God. And
so this is the unfortunate fact. The majority of people feel that it's dangerous to feel their own pain, and the reality is it's dangerous not to.
Yeah.
It's dangerous not to feel your own pain. It's actually going to be better if you feel your pain than not. And this is where I feel a lot of people's false beliefs get really tied up in the whole thing, don't they? Where they believe that if I feel pain, my life's going to get worse, and they often believe that, of course, and that prevents them from feeling their pain, which means their life does get worse, ironically. And I find that so unfortunate watching people do all of this when it's quite simple. If you allow yourself to truly experience your own pain and release it, it will release by you feeling it. Once that happens, change is automatic after that. You don't have to try. And on top of that, you experience the joy of relief of it all being released. And then, but in addition, that is the safest place you could be. And there's so much focus, I find, on how dangerous it is to feel your emotions. Man, the amount of times the media in Australia and overseas has criticised me for teaching this teaching. And it's incredible how much and investment there is in trying to have people not feel their pain.
Isn't it like crazy? Incredible. You don't see them knocking on doors of like funeral parlours and bursting in and saying to people,
"Don't feel your pain.
Stop crying, stop crying, that's dangerous." When in fact we're really just encouraging people to do the same thing. Every time you suppressed a loss or a feeling of fear or a feeling of grief in your past, simply allow that process now.
Correct.
And it's only the false beliefs we have about that process that actually put us in any danger.
Yes. And there are an immense amount of spirits around us who do not want us to feel our pain because it's through our pain that they meet their own addictions.
Or through our avoidance of pain.
Yes. Through our avoidance of trying to get away from our pain, they meet their addictions. So they are heavily invested in telling us that we shouldn't have to feel our pain, right? And the world as well is heavily invested in telling us we shouldn't have to feel our pain. And why is that? Because they want to sell us something. They want to sell us, some kind of product that helps us avoid our pain. That's why they're heavily invested in it. And until the world gets away from this investment in helping people avoid pain and instead makes products and services that helps you get into your pain in a loving way and that is not harmful, then we're not going to have much change on the planet, to be honest.
You can tell we're a bit passionate about this point.
Honestly, it's one of the biggest problems that we face in the teachings of divine truth, because people think that they can absorb new truth without getting rid of the old painful error, and they can't. I can speak truth all day, every day, and we can have like 100 hours of videos every week talking about new truth, and the majority of people are not going to be able to have it absorbed into their soul because they're unwilling to feel the pain of their error. So it's like knocking on a brick wall. Until there's an opening in the soul towards pain, which is like a door in the brick wall, nothing will change. And the world will not accept truth while it is so opposed to feeling pain. Because all of the error that's within the soul is all painful. It's going to have to come out, and it's going to have to come out by experiencing it. And there is no other option. There's no other option. There's no other fancy way. There's no tapping. There's no this. There's no that. There's no Reiki. There's none of those things will cause you to actually get into all of your causal grief and pain. You have to go through it. And when you allow yourself to go through it, God's love can come and just make it just wash away so simply and easily. And this is the sad thing, because we're so unwilling to feel the pain, doesn't give us the opportunity to feel much of God's love either.
And and we know from the other principles, like dominance, we know that all of our belief systems, all of our thoughts, all of our actions, everything is going to be based on what is already in our soul.
Correct.
And so it doesn't matter if you try to find the causal belief and modify that and, ask God to please, take it away. Unless we deal with the causal emotion that has driven that belief.
And unless we're willing to feel it and experience it.
Yes. Unless it's gone from us in an emotional process, it's going to dominate our life.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I feel that this is one of the major things people need to understand about their progression. These are the principles of progression that are so, so important for a person to understand. And if they understand this, they understand the soul. And this kind of understanding of the soul is everlasting. This is how the soul progresses. So once you've released all your pain, the only emotions you experience after that are pleasure. So it's going to be very easy to learn once all the emotions are just pleasurable without learning, isn't it? But if you're unwilling to feel the pain, none of that can actually ever happen. And that's the sad thing. The world is in so much pain, and individuals in the world are in so much pain, that we never engage the process of the feeling of the pain, and then as a result, the truth, the pleasure of receiving the truth cannot happen for us. And that's also a sad thing. So God's trying to share all this truth, all this wealth of emotional experience and truth that God has for us to experience. We can't experience any of it when we're so resistive to our pain. Yeah. And so we're really using our will to lock up the progress of our soul. And so the only way our soul is going to progress is by our being heavily engaged in a slow and very, very painful process of slowly changing each emotion that we're unwilling to feel completely because we're unwilling to cope with being overwhelmed with pain. Yeah. And as a result, we feel a smidge of it, we feel a smidge of it, we feel a smidge of it. We make a little bit of progress because we feel a smidge of it each time. But it takes hundreds, if not thousands of years for people to do that kind of progression. When your progression can be right down 10 years or 15, 20 years. Even on earth it can be 15, 20 years of progression and you're at one with God and without pain. Yeah. So why would you avoid that process when doing it the other way can take thousands of years? Yeah. So it just makes no sense at all to me. And this is something we observed a lot from the spirit world, obviously. People making these choices to avoid pain. And hopefully one of the things we're trying to show people is, like, we've been through a lot of personal pain. And we've still got more personal pain to go through. And each time we do, we end up feeling happier. Yep. And that is a demonstration of the truth of what we teach.